Mr. Stournaras, the Greek government has made extreme cuts to the expenditures, and the whole Greek people have made huge sacrifices. Wages have been lowered by nearly 30%. But even after all these sacrifices, the indebtedness of the Greek state is still extremely high, 175% in relation to GDP, which is, I think, 12% more than it was 4 years ago. So do you really think this austerity path was good to go?
I think, first of all, the level of indebtedness had been forecast, so it is not a surprise that now we have about 170% of GDP debt. But the good thing is that now the two main causes of the crisis and this indebtedness are gone. The twin deficits. The twin deficits, that is a very high budget deficit and very high current account deficit, have now been transformed into surpluses. And this is the important thing. This is the very important thing, and we should not forget. So debt from now on is expected to fall very rapidly. And on top of this, if you remember, in the Eurogroup, we had decided that when Greece gets a primary surplus and the other elements of the program are on track, our peers will look at measures, at activities to bring down the debt even further. So you have endogenous reduction because of the high primary surpluses, because of privatization, but also you have exogenous reduction, perhaps through the activities of our peers, recognizing the efforts and the sacrifices of the Greek people.
Why do you expect that the debt will come down very soon? Because economic performance is still quite poor, and
well, economic performance,
and you have not a real surplus. You have only a primary surplus, which does not mean that you can redent debt.
But the primary surplus it is what matters. If you look at the debt dynamics, it is the primary surplus which matters. Is the growth rate, as you said, is the interest rate, and the privatization revenue. So all these elements now are on track. The interest rates are very low because of the agreements we have with our peers. The growth rate was negative and is expected to be positive this year, and we have strong evidence in the first quarter of the year that it is going to be positive. We have privatization revenue, and we have a primary surplus. So all the parameters of the debt dynamics formula are on track for a huge reduction of the level of debt. I mean, if you look all the projections by the IMF, by the Troika, by all other organizations, they show a trajectory which envisages a debt to GDP ratio from about 170 today to around 123 to 24 in 2020 and 110 in 2022. So this is a big reduction.
Well, but this is based on very generous assumptions.
No, this is based on
about the coming growth period. But on the way to this stage today, you have lost nearly a quarter of the whole economy. And the backbone of the Greek economy used to be small and medium enterprises, of which more than 200,000 have been closed.
Yes, but do you have to suggest any other method that would bring the economy away from the abyss, from chaos? I would be very open if you can suggest to me a better way. I can tell you, if our peers would commit more money for Greece, if they could give us more time to adjust, yes, the recession would have been milder, and liquidity will be higher. But there have been decisions, parliaments involved, so we had to act in a very given constraint. And given the constraint, I think we have done our best. We have corrected mistakes. Some measures were not correct. So we have managed to change these measures with other measures. And the good thing is now Greece performs very well, both on the fiscal developments. The primary surplus in 2013 was 1% of GDP, almost 1% of GDP, versus a target of 0. The OECD deems Greece as a champion of reforms in the previous years, of structural reforms. So we are on the right track. Well, okay, there have been unhappy moments in the past, but now it is gone. It's bygones.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do ask because there are many economists who say the deep cuts in the budget were made too fast. And by this, the internal demand has been lowered so fast that very high level of economic performance have been lost on the way.
True.
And of course, people suffer. Huh? There are nearly 3 million Greeks who have no health insurance anymore.
But the budget cuts
have no access to health care. So maybe Greece is losing more than it gains.
No, this is not correct. The budget cuts are a one-to-one function to the financing constraints. We had a specific financing constraint, and that's why we had these budget cuts. If we had a more relaxed financing constraints, the budget cuts would have been lower,
mm-hmm.
would have been smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And the cuts in wages and salaries, the tax increases wouldn't be as high as we had in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is a function.
What do you mean by financial constraints? What exactly?
Greece could not borrow. Greece could not borrow from abroad, so Greece had to borrow the available money put aside from our peers. If the money was 100, we had to adjust our budget,
mm-hmm.
okay, with this amount of money. If the money was 200,
mm-hmm.
then we could have relaxed policies even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a function of the decisions taken by other member states. If you're outside markets, the only opportunity to survive is through the money available to you
yes.
by our peers.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why we had these budget cuts.
So you had to
let's put the record straight.
By the conditions the peers, as you call them, have put to you.
Yes.
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 Now, I've seen a document, a memo from...
Okay, let me...
Yeah.
Some economists that you mentioned say that Greece could have borrowed perhaps from China, from Russia. I mean, this is not realistic.
This is not realistic.
This is not realistic, as you know.
No, but maybe, let me explain why I do ask this question.
Yes.
I've seen a memo from the IMF staff from March 2010, which was already before the first memorandum of
yes.
understanding. And this memo says and warns that if the fiscal adjustment would take place in such a high velocity, probably the damage done to the Greek economy and to the social fabric of the society would be extremely high, and the IMF staff really warned to follow this path, and they were against to follow this path, and the internal rules of the IMF had to be changed in order to make it possible to put this program.
It seems that the IMF respects what we call Chinese walls, so that in the research departments they say this, but the Troika, when they come to Greece, they don't accept this.
Yeah.
So they have to make up their mind what is correct. Mm-hmm. From the first thing I told the Troika when I became minister 2 years ago is that I said, look, by just looking at the model, I think the measures you ask are too harsh for the targets we have set. I said, I agree with the targets, mm-hmm. but I think that the measures are too harsh for these targets, are too many mm-hmm. for these targets. At this moment, they denied this, but as things went by, I was right. I mean, we had a much higher primary surplus, and the IMF itself mm-hmm. Produced research reports saying that the multiplier was different than what we had expected. But okay, this is with the benefit of hindsight. But when you are in the middle of the battle, you have to fight. And at this moment, they did not accept this argument. Mm-hmm. This argument is being accepted now, thank God.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I was talking about a warning of the IMF staff, not the research department, but from the IMF staff. On the ground in Athens, they warned what would happen if the fiscal adjustment would go too fast. And then when the final decision was taken in Washington by the executive directors, they changed the rules and said, because of systemic reasons, we have to go this way in Greece because we cannot afford another sort of a Lehman event in the global financial system. And then when I read this, I wondered, did this mean that Greece was sacrificed for the sake of global financial stability?
No, Greece was not sacrificed.
Well, many Greek, when you ask them, they tell you, we were sacrificed.
Yes, but I told you, why don't you ask our peers to put aside more money?
We will do.
More money. That's the right attitude. I fully accept what you say.
Yeah.
But as a government, we had to make up our minds because, you know, the alternative would be to exit the euro. And that would have been a huge disaster. A huge disaster. As you know, many economists argued wrongly that Greece should get out of the euro. Of course, now these economists don't speak anymore. But at that time, there were voices advising us to get out of the euro. That would have been a suicide. That would have condemned Greek people into eternal misery, or for a misery of more than 50 years. So I think, given the constraints, and I repeat that, given the constraints imposed upon us, we took the right decision. All the other things is theory, is academic. We are here today. Things are improving. The economy is on the road to recovery. More and more tourists are coming back to Greece. We are going to have a record year this year. Foreign direct investment flows to Greece. There's a lot of interest for a lot of investments. So,
but isn't that because the assets which are for sale, the state assets, are sold for extremely depressed prices? I think a lot of foreign investors just come because of this bargain prices they get.
I do not accept that, because just look at the prices of banks, of the share of banks, look at the comparables and the multiples with other countries. It's not true anymore. No, I don't accept that. But foreign investors are coming back mostly because the fundamentals are now right.
But you mentioned the banks. The Greek government has invested 39 billion euros in the recapitalization of the 4 pillar banks and the liquidation of all the other smaller ones. And now the banks are being sold at a much lower price than the government itself has spent for the same shares. Why doesn't Greece follow the American model, recapitalize the banks, make them profitable again, and then sell them with profit and privatize?
Because the important thing now is for foreign investors also to participate in Greek banks. And if you look at the valuations today, the assets, the bank assets that the Greek Stabilization Fund has now at its disposal gives you already a balance. So the money was well spent. So you should look at the whole picture, not one or two banks only. Look at the stability of the whole of the banking system. Deposits are now safe. Negative values have now been eliminated. Don't forget that when this happened, there was negative worth of Greek banks. It's not anymore. So the exercise was successful. So don't be misled. Don't talk as a professor. You should be on the battle.
I'm no professor at all. No. But look.
But these are very academic arguments.
Well, but
if you allow me to say.
Yeah, maybe. But
with all due respect.
Okay, you may say what you want, but look, at least from an outsider's perspective, it looks like Greece borrows from the other Euro countries 40 billion euros in order to recapitalize the banks. And then those same banks are sold at much lower prices to American fund investors who now claim they have made a killing with Greek banks. And at the same time, the European taxpayer has the liability. And for example, the Greek government or the Greek state is going to make a huge loss with this bank recapitalization. And at the same time, there's not enough money to take care for ill people. So it makes the impression that you have got the priorities wrong.
No, not at all. Don't forget that the negative worth of Greek banks was due to the fact, to the PSI, to the reduction of debt. So the contribution of the banking sector in the reduction of debt was a huge one. So you have to take this into account in your balance, in your equation. So if you take this into account, now the overall exercise means that already we have a profit from this. So it's not correct what you say, and I don't accept these arguments. I mean, the recapitalization of the Greek banks occurred in very bad moments where they had negative worth, that the banking system was in danger, that the deposits of people were in danger. So it was not a normal, it was not a normal investment, say, decision. It was a rescue exercise.
Yes.
Don't forget this.
Yes, but what I do not understand is why those same banks who have been de facto nationalized for a certain period of time now are sold at bargain prices to American investors. For example, take Eurobank. The Greek state has spent per share €1.54, and now the same bank sells shares to American investors for 31% per share. So the whole state investment is being diluted by a huge amount and the state makes a loss. Why that?
No, because now we have set aside 11 billion left
from the whole fund,
which is to stay there, because don't forget we have stress test by the ECB, and we want to have a cushion there. So prudent decision making dictates that we should minimize at this stage the participation of the Greek state and invite foreign investors also to participate in Greek banks. If the exercise, if the ECB stress test finish, then we could have been in a much better position to decide how we can dispose of this 11 billion left. But here we feel safe because we have this 11 billion as a cushion, and this is prudential policy.
Well, it might be prudential, but it comes with a huge gain for private investors on the back of loans given by European taxpayers. That's difficult to understand.
No, this is a calculations of gains and risks. We have done the right thing. The European taxpayer is benefiting from this. Don't forget now we are under state aid rules, and the competition committee, the DGCOM, also agrees with this policy, that we should maximize the participation of foreign investors into Greek banks before we use state money more. So it's prudence. We have set this 11 billion aside for the future. Well, it could be used, for instance, if...
But for example, you could have used it to buy further shares of these banks who need additional capital and wait until they are profitable again, and then sell the profits with the banks with the profit for the state. You know, at the same time, the Greek state is desperately in need of money for social purposes, for healthcare.
That's exactly.
And that's why I do not understand that on the one hand, for example, John Paulson of New York says, oh, we have made huge gains with our investments in Greek banks, which are financed by borrowed money from the other Euro countries. And at the same time, I have to read all these horrible news about ill Greek people who do not get healthcare. I do not understand.
Yeah, but that's exactly. If we could use more state money for banks, we wouldn't have enough money for healthcare. So you're contradicting yourself. What we say is that state money is very scarce at the moment. So we should use it very, very carefully. If there are foreign investors willing to participate, they should participate. We encourage this policy. The state money or our peers' money is a very scarce resource. It should stay aside.
Yes.
So you have to decide either healthcare or state money into banks. If there are foreign investors willing to invest in Greek banks, let's keep the money, the state money, for healthcare and the poor.
Well, but by this, the value of the state's part in these banks is diluted, and you make a loss.
No, you didn't understand. I have already told you that as from today, from today, the valuation of the banks belonging to the state already covers the amount we have already invested. So we are already at a profit now, not in 2016. Now, in the mid of 2014. So the investment was profitable.
So you deny this dilution effect?
There is a dilution effect, but also there are also gains because the shares of the banks are now much higher. The share price. Look at the share price from the beginning of the year up to today.
Okay, I will do so. According to my calculations, there is no gain for the state, but we will see.
I said no. I know the numbers very well. I think what you miss is that you don't include in your equation the participation of the Greek banks into the PSI. Mm-hmm. That means a gain for the state, because the state gained in terms of the reduction of debt undertaken by banks. So if you take this into, in your equation, you cannot put only things that you want to put. You must be objective. You should put everything in there.
I understand your point. But one final question to this, and then I will finish the questions on banks. Why it is necessary to produce profits for American hedge funds via Greek banks?
No, it is not necessary. This is markets. We don't say we don't produce profits. These investors, they take decisions. They look at profits, they look at risks, and they decide. Here it is a win-win situation. They don't gain at the expense of Greece. We both gain now. So this is how markets are working. We don't live in a Soviet system anymore, or unless you make a suggestion that we should change our...
No, I do not. No, for sure I do not. But I doubt the calculation. But maybe let's cut it here.
Yeah.
Another important element you already mentioned is the privatization of state assets, and nearly everything is for sale: port, airports, real estate, even water utilities. And what I've seen of the privatizations done so far is that the process is organized in a way that in the end there is often only one bidder, and the assets are sold at very, very low prices. Isn't it a failure to do it in such a fast way, and to sell the assets at a point when there is no real competition and when the prices are too low?
No. For example, now we have many bidders. We have many bidders for harbors, many bidders, 6 or 7, both for Piraeus and Thessalonica. We have many bidders for the airports. So it's not true anymore. It was before, but not because of the organization, because there was lack of interest for Greece, because Greece still had not escaped from the bad effects. Now that the situation improves, we do have many bidders now. So it's not true anymore that we don't have bidders.
But at least in these cases I've studied, for example, the sale of the lottery or the casino business, OPAP, or the sale of the former Ellinikon airport area to real estate investors. Wouldn't it have been better in these cases to stop the process and wait for a later time and development instead of selling it away for a bargain price?
I don't believe in delaying decisions. That would have been a Ponzi game later and later and later, and would have never happened. So now is the time to take decisions, to proceed with privatizations, to make the Greek economy a normal economy again.
Mm-hmm. Well, but many Greek we talk to sees this as our country is for sale for bargain prices to foreign investors. It's given away for nearly nothing. For example, the huge Ellinikon area it's I think 3 times the area of Monaco. And what is really being paid is 200 million euros in the first 2 years. And the rest will be given 10 years later and so on.
I think I have a suspicion that
Yes.
you make your calculations wrong, because you don't take into account the amounts that the investor will invest, and also there were independent valuators giving values to the Greek state,
Yes.
selling the Ellinikon. But now, as the situation improves, more and more bidders are coming to Greece, and so it's important to start the privatization process. By delaying privatization decisions would have been wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, I mean...
But you do it against the resistance of the affected population.
You and some other economists, you are falling in the fallacy of composition. I mean, people say, okay, you're selling assets. I mean, okay, we develop Greek land, but the Greek land is there. It's for the benefit of Greek people. Investments, real estate, many other assets which are going to offer new jobs and activities. I mean, these are not parts of land which will be cut and taken away. They will stay there. I mean, we need the money and the liquidity of foreign investors, because we don't have liquidity. So for every euro invested in Elliniko, 5 more euros will be created in the Greek economy through the multiplier effect of building activity, of new jobs. So you shouldn't look at things in a narrow way.
Well, yeah, but the critics say that in this Ellinikon sale, there are no real binding commitments to invest in a certain period of time, a certain amount of money, that all these are only empty promises, and
why all these critics?
That the buyer is allowed to sell the land piece by piece to other investors, and nobody knows what will happen.
No, there's a very specific, a very well organized bidding procedure. People who are free to come and bid. All those who criticize, why didn't they come to bid? If they thought that it was so cheap, why didn't they participate? Why not? All those critics. I mean, that would be a terrible...
Probably they have no capital at all to invest.
Why don't they borrow money? Now the world is full of liquidity. The interest rates are the lowest ever in history. Huge liquidity. Why didn't they borrow money and come and bid for Elliniko? So there's something wrong. That's why I called it a fallacy of composition.
Okay.
It's good to criticize, but you should offer alternatives.
Other critics say that some of the planned or scheduled privatizations are unconstitutional. For example, recently the Supreme Administration Court has decided that the sale of Athens water utility would be unconstitutional. Will that mean that this process of the sale will be stopped?
We respect the decision of courts, and the Supreme Court will see how we can change the rules for the bidding, so to make it consistent with the Supreme Court decision.
How might this happen when they say the water provider has to be under state control because it's an essential element of life? How you can change the rules?
We do not privatize the water. We privatize the processes. We privatize the organization. So that's exactly how we plan to. I say we plan. I'm not a minister anymore.
Yes.
Sometimes
you did plan. Yeah.
I did plan. Yes. Yeah.
Many other countries have made very bad experiences with privatization of water utilities. For example, particularly in France, most of the privatized water utilities are being renationalized or recommunalized now because citizens protested against higher prices and less investment by the private investors. Wouldn't it have been better to study these examples and say, well, maybe that's not the best way to do it?
We have studied these examples, and this is why we have now a water regulator as well. So
France has as well.
Yeah, but France did it after the event. So we are doing it before the event. So the investor will know the conditions that he has to abide by.
There's the similar problem with real estate sales, including the beaches. According to the Greek constitutions, buildings on the beaches are forbidden. Beaches are for the public. but the same privatization fund now is going to sell real estate, even including the beaches. Is this not a breach of the constitution?
Oh, not at all. The beaches will remain for the people, available for the people. What we're trying to do is, first of all, to charter the coastline, so everybody knows what is a coastline and what it is not, and create conditions for investments there. So we don't sell beaches. We sell.
Well, I've seen it on the website of the privatization fund.
We develop land, taking into account proper care for the environment and the protection of the beaches. So Greece needs investment in tourism. It is vital. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But investments with full respect for the environment. Contrary to what you said, today anarchy exists and many people exploit the fact that there are not strict rules. So what we're trying to do is to impose strict rules and at the same time create conditions for the development of these beaches. Mm-hmm. But development which fully respects the environment and the beaches themselves. And we're not crazy because these beaches are a national treasure, and this is why we plan to protect them.
Mm-hmm. In its most recent review, the IMF says that at the current level the debt is still unsustainable, and that the European creditors, the other Euro countries, have to give sort of a debt relief. What form could this take?
It's something which will be discussed in the Eurogroup. When I was minister, I had discussed certain of these issues with the IMF, but we should wait until the Eurogroup convenes in the autumn, after the stress tests of ECB finish, mm-hmm. To discuss this issue. Here we are closed with the IMF. We had a discussion. There are scenarios. There are many ways that the Greek debt could be fall even further, using exogenous measures. I mean, the endogenous ones are the ones I described to you, like the primary surplus, high growth privatization. But also our peers could also help in bringing debt down even further in a win-win situation. That is a situation where no damage is inflicted on them. So we are finding ways.
But somebody has to take damages if a relief is being done.
No, because if world interest rates are as low as they are now, they offer an opportunity, mm-hmm. a huge opportunity. So we should exploit the current situation as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One final question. You are counted as one of the architects within the Greek side of this whole rescue and troika project. Are there any things that you would have made differently now from hindsight?
Well, as you know, when you are doing so many things, you're bound to make mistakes. Definitely certain decisions, especially on the tax side, you have taken with these acute financing constraints would have been taken if you didn't have these constraints. So now that the situation improves and the fiscal developments are better than expected, the government could do some fine-tuning and correcting certain of these mistakes, on the tax side mostly. I mean, for instance, we had extraordinary charges on income earners above 2,000 euros. This was an extraordinary tax. I mean, as the situation improves, slowly and gradually, this extra tax should be reduced.
But sorry, I have not just put one more question. You always say it improves, but isn't Greece caught in the midst of deflation where nobody really invests in a classical way? Because deflation means more or less a stop of the investment process.
No, it is not correct. We have all the evidence now, all the soft and hard indicators show that activity is being restored. I mean, between the first quarter of 2014 and the first quarter of 2013, GDP has improved by 5 percentage points, from -6%
mm-hmm.
to less than -1, to, actually to 2.9. That's a 6 percentage points improvement. If this goes for the rest of the year, we're going to have a strong positive growth rate this year. So we don't have deflation anymore. And now Greece is flooded with tourists. We're going to have a very good year. So don't bet on the GDP growth rate at the end of the year. Yet. Don't.
I hope you're right.
Hold your guns. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it very much. Yeah, thanks a lot.
We need to take the microphone.
Yes.
Keine totale, kein Foto?
Wir haben kein Fotoapparat mit. Haben wir mit? Ah, well, then let's make one photo, please, if you still have the time.
How did you, just a personal question,
yes.
How it is to deal as an elected minister of an democratically elected government with unelected officials from the Troika? For me, I always wonder how I would feel, yeah? When I have a commitment to my voters and to the party and to the media and so on, and then these nameless, more or less, officials tell me what I have to do.
First of all these programs are being voted by the parliament. You will go to the parliament.
But there have been a lot of presidential decrees as well.
True. But everything at the end of the day goes to the parliament. Everything. Even when you issue extraordinary laws because time is limited, even this situation goes to the parliament at the end of the day, and it could be rejected. So nothing is left outside the parliamentary powers. Now, the Troika people, you said, they have been authorized by their governments and their parliaments, and they're accountable to the European Parliament.
No, they are not.
No, they are. Olli Rehn goes to the European Parliament very often and discusses.
On a voluntary basis, and the Parliament has no access to documents, they have no investigation rights. No, this is not what accountability is called.
This parliaments of member states who have lent the money.
Of the members, yes.
They have taken the decision. So that's, we have to take
well, I've followed it very close here in the Bundestag in Germany, and what I've seen is what was the right of the Parliament? They had they get a huge package of paper, 600, 700 pages, often only few days before the decision is taken, and then what they are asked to is to say yes or no. But they cannot make any change in the program because it has all been negotiated, and then they have only to decide about, well, go for chaos, default, Eurozone dismantled and so on, or accept what is in these papers. That is not a really democratic process. It's only a formal decision-taking.
But I can assure you that in the Greek Parliament, I have spent an awful amount of time debating with parliamentarians, page by page, the agreement. And we have made many changes, which the Troika had to accept ex post. So it's not true that everything is taken as negotiated. No, believe me, it was not easy the previous 2 years at all.
All right, I believe you.
Having to deal
with
this process, you said, which is part of the democratic process, of course. But in a way, with the Troika, you're dealing with the parliaments of all the lenders, in a way.
Yes,
so it's
of
not
course.
easy at all.
No.
It's not easy. It would have been much better if Europe was ready and had a rescue mechanism, but it didn't.
Yes, of course. Yes,
now
of
it
course.
does. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Well,
Yeah, thanks a lot for granting this interview.
Thanks a
I
lot.
wish you good luck as a new governor.
When will you present it? When will you show this?
It will be finished only in November.
So late.
Yes, we have to do all the other. Greece
So
is
you're
only.
going to interview the
We
Troika,
go,
and
yes, and we go to Portugal.
Mrs. Merkel and Mrs. Schäuble. Take an interview from Wolfgang.
We will try. I'm not quite sure whether he will grant it because last time it was not so.
Yeah.
It was about the bank rescues in Ireland and Spain, and I asked him for the responsibility of German investors,
Yes.
because it was German money which has pumped up the Irish bubble. But no German investor has lost a cent in Ireland.
Okay, I mean, perhaps sometimes and from a distance, a calm discussion should take place and ask why this happened. I mean, I think the number one thing that we didn't see were the current account deficits after the creation of the euro. Immediately from the second day, the current account deficits of the south increased, and the current account surpluses of the north also increased. So that was the problem. Why? Because of banks. Banks moved capital to speculative activities in Spain or elsewhere.
We've talked for the last one. We have talked to one of the president of the Spanish cajas, you know, the problem banks, and he told us how ridiculously easy it was when he traveled to Munich and Düsseldorf and Frankfurt to collect German investors' money. And he said they didn't even ask us where we will invest it. Yeah.
No.
They
I
simply
mean, it's good. I mean, and now a new architecture would imply that the north could invest money to the south, because the south offers better returns, as you said, for Greece. It's not only Greece; it's also Portugal, Spain. Yeah. But we must have rules now for these investments.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
when you are in your new post, probably I will need once more your help.
In 20 days from now?
In 20 days from now. Because I will go